Welcome to this deep dive into the world of Formula One. Today, we're zooming in on Aston Martin.
Yeah, there's been quite a bit of commentary recently, hasn't there, from people who really know the sport.
Exactly. And our goal here is really to, get a proper feel for the challenges they're up against right now.
Things like the car performance, obviously, but also Fernando Alonso's whole situation there, his commitment.
Right. So let's try and cut through the noise a bit. Understand the core issues.
Yes, they got the general feeling around their performance.
Yeah.
And yeah, definitely Alonso's angle on it all. We'll use some recent insights to sort of unpack it.
Okay, perfect. Let's start with Alonso then. The analysis we're drawing on, it shows huge respect for his dedication, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Even with the team, clearly struggling, his effort level seems, well, maxed out.
Yeah, you see it, don't you? That observation about him being physically, emotionally drained after races.
It really stands out. It's not just driving fast. It's this deep investment, even when points look, frankly, pretty unlikely.
That radio message from Saudi Arabia stuck with me. I'm not going to do a race like this again in 25 years. Wow.
Yeah, that tells you everything about the physical toll, the mental strain he's under pushing that car.
And it's quite a contrast. The commentary mentions how maybe some other veteran drivers don't quite have that same fire anymore.
It's a fair point. What keeps him going like this? It's pretty remarkable.
What do you think it is? Because the commentator also seems surprised he hasn't been more publicly critical. No GP2 engine moments this time around.
That's true. It's interesting. Maybe it's a different approach now. More mature, perhaps. Or, like you hinted, maybe it's tied into this long-term picture he has with Aston.
Right, let's get into that. His commitment beyond just driving. He talks about Aston Martin being his last team.
Exactly. It's not just about finishing this contract or the next one. He's looking further down the road.
He wants to stay involved even after he hangs up his helmet, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's been quite open about that. Wants to be part of the team, maybe in some advisory role or something, to help them actually get to, championship contention.
So that long-term view, it probably explains why he's being supportive now, avoiding public criticism that could damage the team he wants to help build.
It makes sense, doesn't it? Foster a positive environment, keep morale up, even when things are tough. It all feeds into that bigger ambition.
Okay, so you've got Alonso totally bought in, looking at the long game. But then there's the current reality, the car. The outlook for this season, 2025, it doesn't sound great based on this commentary.
No, it doesn't. The analysis is pretty pessimistic, suggesting there hasn't been any real significant step forward in performance.
And the feeling is that this current level, this might just be where they are for the rest of the year.
That seems to be the expectation, unfortunately, which points towards a sort of stagnation in their development.
And that's the frustrating bit, isn't it? The team says they understand the problems, but we're just not seeing the upgrades making a difference on the stopwatch.
Exactly. And crucially, the comparison to last year is quite stark. The commentary points out that the 2024 times are actually worse in some cases.
Even though they carried over bits like that floor they introduced in Japan last year.
Yeah, even with parts like the Japan floor concept continuing, it suggests they haven't moved forward, maybe even slipped back slightly relative to the competition's progress.
There's that analogy the commentator used, something about a meeting of shepherds.
Ah, yes. That really captured the skepticism, didn't it? The idea that just holding meetings and talking about the problems won't fix anything unless there are concrete, effective solutions being implemented on the car. You need action, not just talk.
That really hits home. It makes you think back to early 2023 when they looked so strong. The commentary called that period a bit of a mirage. Why use that word?
Well, the context is key. That analysis explains that Aston's strong start back then, those podiums, happened partly because their main rivals were, frankly, struggling quite a bit.
Ah, right. So Mercedes, McLaren, Ferrari, they weren't operating at their usual level initially.
Exactly. If everyone had been on their game from the start, the suggestion is Aston probably would have been around P5 in the pecking order, which is sort of where they ended up later in the season anyway.
Okay, so it wasn't just a massive Aston leap. It was also McLaren having a terrible start.
Yep, McLaren were really off the pace initially before their big turnaround.
Mercedes had that Medusa car, as they called it, with all its handling quirks.
Right, the W14 wasn't behaving itself. And Ferrari, they still had those ongoing issues with chewing through their tires too quickly.
So all that created a bit of a vacuum at the front, and Aston Martin stepped into it.
Precisely. But then, this is where the analysis points to the problem starting. Aston's own development seemed to hit a wall around the middle of 2023.
That's when things get inconsistent.
Yeah, you saw those confusing results, like Alonso getting a great podium in the wet, Zandvoort maybe, and then the next race in the dry. They'd be nowhere near that pace.
Suggesting they didn't have a consistent grip on the car's performance or the development direction wasn't quite right.
Exactly. It suggests maybe they lost the way a bit. And the crucial point is, the updates they've brought since that mid-2023 point, they just haven't really delivered significant, consistent performance gains.
Okay, now a really worrying point that came up in the commentary was about these correlation issues. Can you break that down? Why is that such a big deal?
Right. So correlation issues, basically it means the results you're seeing in your simulations, like in the wind tunnel or on the computer, they don't match up with what the car actually does on the track.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a fundamental problem for development. Because if you develop a new wing in the tunnel and the data says this will make you half a second faster, but you put it on the car and it makes no difference, or even makes it slower.
Then you can't trust your tools. You're just guessing.
Pretty much. It makes improving the car incredibly difficult, almost impossible to do efficiently. You're wasting time and resources developing parts based on flawed information.
And the commentary links this directly to the 2026 car, right? Because they're using the same tools, the same wind tunnel.
That's the big concern highlighted. If the underlying correlation problems aren't fixed, then the entire development process for the crucial 2026 car, the new regulations car, it could be built on shaky foundations.
Potentially baking in problems from the start.
Exactly. There's a risk they repeat the same mistakes. And on top of that, the commentary also threw in the uncertainty about the new Honda engine for 2026. Will it be competitive right out of the box against Mercedes and Ferrari power? Another unknown.
It sounds quite bleak in places, but throughout this, the analysis really stresses the commentators' credibility, their track record.
Yeah, they make a point of mentioning the commentators' long experience and commitment to honest reporting. There was that anecdote about refusing pressure years ago to talk up some Ferrari upgrades that didn't actually exist.
Right, illustrates a certain integrity, sticking to the facts even when it's unpopular.
And that connects to the flack they apparently got for predicting Aston's struggles in the 2024 preseason tests. They saw the data, called it how they saw it, and, well, turned out to be accurate, didn't it?
Yeah, seems so. So, okay, acknowledging all these difficulties, is there any, glimmer of hope offered?
Well, the hope hinges on them fixing that correlation issue. If Aston Martin can figure out why their tools aren't matching reality and fix it,
then they can start trusting their development process again.
Exactly. That would be massive. It would mean the work they do for the rest of this year, and crucially for the 2026 car, is based on solid ground. Making genuine progress becomes possible again.
So it's a long road ahead. Obviously, 19 races still to go this season? But fixing that fundamental issue is key.
It's absolutely paramount for their future ambitions.
Okay, so let's try and pull this together. Our deep dive today, based on this commentary, paints a picture of, Fernando Alonso showing unbelievable dedication in really tough circumstances.
While the team itself, Aston Martin, is facing some pretty major performance challenges, development seems to have stalled.
Yeah, real stagnation there. And big question marks over the future, especially looking ahead to the 2026 rules and the Honda partnership.
Which leaves us, and you listening, with something pretty significant to think about, doesn't it?
Go on.
Well, considering everything we've just discussed, what does this all mean for Fernando Alonso's legacy? He's putting in so much, but the results aren't there right now. And for Aston Martin, are these just growing pains, a temporary slump on their way to the top?
Or is it maybe a sign of deeper issues, more structural problems that might hinder their ambition to become a real championship contender?
Exactly. Is this a blip, or is it the reality of where they are? Definitely food for thought.